It all started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the clouds seem to hang low with secrets, and the streets glisten with quiet tension. The city of Brookwood was buzzing as usual, with horns blaring and people rushing past one another, but no one noticed the sleek black SUV turning onto Maple Avenue. Inside it sat a man who usually commanded the room with just his presence. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit with a small pin of the Constitution on his lapel, Chief Justice Raymond Ellis looked out the window, deep in thought. He had just wrapped up a high-profile case that morning, one that had drawn national attention and sparked debate in every corner of the internet. What he didn't know was that by sundown, his entire world would flip upside down, and so would the public's view of justice in America. Just a few miles away, Officer Trent Mallory sat in his patrol car sipping bitter coffee, eyes narrowed as he listened to chatter over the radio. He had a reputation in the department, sharp, ambitious, and known for his strictness, but whispers had begun circulating about his tendencies during stops, especially involving people of color. But today, he wasn't pulling over a speeding teen or writing up parking violations. Today, his assignment was much bigger, and far more dangerous for the truth. The order had come down oddly, no paperwork, no formal complaint. Just a voice over a secured line saying, "Pick up Raymond Ellis. Use discretion." Trent's brow furrowed. "Ellis? The Chief Justice," he muttered, stunned. But a second later, his expression shifted into something unreadable. He knew he had to do it. The system had spoken, and in his eyes, the badge came before the man. Meanwhile, Raymond Ellis arrived at his usual lunch spot, an old neighborhood diner tucked behind the courthouse, known more for its friendly staff than its food. He greeted the waitress with a warm smile. "The usual, Ray?" she asked. He nodded. "And maybe an extra slice of that peach pie. It's been a long week." He had no idea that two unmarked patrol cars had already boxed in his vehicle outside. No one approached him, not yet. They waited. Watched. And the moment he stepped out of the diner, wiping his hands with a napkin and humming an old blues tune, they moved. "Raymond Ellis," one officer barked as he walked toward his car. Startled, he turned. "Yes, can I help you?" "Hands where we can see them," the second officer yelled, drawing a weapon. The street froze. People looked up from their phones. The waitress ran to the door, confused and scared. "What's going on?" Ray's heart pounded. "Officers, I don't understand. I'm the Chief Justice of—" "On your knees. Now." Officer Mallory's voice was sharp, cutting through the rising tension like a knife. "I haven't done anything wrong," Ray said, trying to keep calm, but his hands trembled. He had presided over thousands of cases. He had worn that robe with pride for 28 years. And now, here he was, being treated like a criminal in the very city where his word had shaped justice. Phones came out. Bystanders began recording. A few people shouted, "That's the Chief Justice," but the officers didn't flinch. They cuffed him roughly and shoved him toward the patrol car. Inside the vehicle, silence. Raymond stared at his reflection in the window, his mind spinning. Why was this happening? Who would authorize such an arrest without cause? There were no charges read. No rights explained. Just cold stares and tightened grips. Back at the precinct, things got even stranger. He was placed in a holding cell. No one would tell him what he was being accused of. His requests to contact legal counsel were ignored. And when he finally asked for a phone call, he was told coldly, "Not yet." Hours passed. The waiting felt endless. Elsewhere, the news had started to spread. A bystander's video of the arrest had already gone viral. Social media exploded with questions and outrage. Why was Chief Justice Ellis arrested? Was this racial profiling? What's really going on in Brookwood? A young civil rights attorney named Maya Turner watched the footage from her tiny office downtown. She leaned forward, pressing pause and zooming in on the video. Something didn't sit right. She'd seen Chief Ellis speak at a youth conference just a month earlier. He had been humble, powerful, and full of hope for change. Now he was in handcuffs? It didn't make sense. She grabbed her coat and headed to the courthouse. Someone had to do something. Meanwhile, inside that cold cell, Ray sat on the edge of the bench, trying to stay composed. He knew the law better than anyone in that building. But now, that law had turned on him. Was this justice, or something darker? Finally, after hours in limbo, the door creaked open. Officer Mallory stepped in, his expression unreadable. Behind him was a man in a cheap suit holding a folder. "Raymond Ellis," the man began, not even making eye contact, "you are being held under suspicion of obstruction and misuse of public authority." Ray blinked, stunned. "What? That's absurd. Where's the proof?" The man didn't answer. He dropped the folder on the table and walked out. But what no one in that room realized yet, was that someone had already leaked a confidential memo, one that would flip this entire story on its head. Because what had started as a mysterious arrest, was about to unravel into a scandal that reached the highest corridors of power. And the worst part? The very system Ray had devoted his life to, was the same one now trying to bury him. But he wouldn't go down quietly. He looked up at Officer Mallory, his voice calm but heavy with truth. "You're going to regret this." Mallory smirked. "We'll see about that." Outside, thunder rolled. A storm was coming. Not just in the sky, but across the entire nation. And when the truth finally came out, apologies wouldn't be enough. Because sometimes, forgiveness comes too late. Especially when the justice system turns against its own. To be continued. Raymond Ellis sat in that cold, flickering cell, his mind racing with every second. The buzz of the overhead light echoed like a ticking clock, each flicker pulling him deeper into doubt. It wasn't just the arrest that unsettled him, it was the silence afterward. No lawyers, no charges that made sense, and no explanation from anyone in authority. It was as if he had disappeared from the world and no one was supposed to know. But people did know. That video was out there, and it was spreading fast. Across town, Maya Turner marched through the courthouse halls with the kind of determination only someone used to being underestimated could carry. At 32, she'd already made headlines once for winning a civil suit against a major corporation for racial discrimination. But she knew this situation was different. More dangerous. Arresting a Chief Justice, a respected black man with a clean record and a decades-long history of public service, and doing it without cause? That wasn't just injustice. That was something calculated. Maya knew she'd need allies, so she called Marcus Lee, a seasoned investigative journalist who had once exposed corruption in the Brookwood Police Department 5 years earlier. She didn't have to say much. "They arrested Chief Ellis," she said. Silence on the other end. "Then, meet me in 20 minutes. Back at the station, Officer Mallory stared at the one-way mirror into the room where Ray was being held. A younger officer, nervous and fidgety, stood beside him. "Sir, people are asking questions. Should we notify the department head?" Mallory didn't answer right away. He tapped his fingers on the glass. "No. Not yet. Let this play out." "Do we even have anything on him?" the rookie asked, voice low. Mallory turned sharply. "You want to know what we have? We have orders. That's what we follow. But it's the Chief Justice. People are talking. You want to keep that badge? Then you keep your mouth shut and your head down." The rookie swallowed hard and nodded, but his eyes flicked toward the room again. Even he could feel it, something was off. Deeply off. Inside the holding room, Ray closed his eyes and tried to recall everything that had happened over the past week. Had he made a political enemy? Was someone trying to retaliate for one of his rulings? There was that case. The one involving a controversial property developer accused of targeting low-income black neighborhoods for illegal evictions. Ray had ruled in favor of the families. The developer had powerful connections. But could it really be linked? Or maybe it was something even deeper. Ray had always pushed for transparency within the judicial system. He had once spoken publicly about bias in sentencing and called out racial disparities in police stops. Those comments hadn't earned him many friends in law enforcement circles. He knew that. But could they really stoop this low? Meanwhile, Marcus Lee was already digging. He'd received a tip just before Maya's call, an anonymous message warning that something was brewing involving the top bench. Now, with the video in hand and his contacts lighting up with rumors, he sensed a cover-up was in motion. He texted Maya, "Let's meet at City Records. I need case files." They knew it wouldn't be easy. Files connected to Raymond Ellis would be locked down, especially anything recent. But Marcus had his ways. Together, they started piecing together the timeline. Something didn't match up. The supposed charges mentioned during the brief statement at the precinct, obstruction and misuse of public authority, didn't align with anything on public record. There were no complaints, no open investigations. The only thing they found was a sealed memo from 3 weeks ago, from an internal audit committee Ray himself had quietly started. Maya scanned the document. "Wait, this is about judicial appointments. Background checks." He was looking into bribes? Marcus nodded. Yeah. He must have found something. Something he wasn't supposed to. Back at the station, Ray leaned forward as the door finally creaked open again. This time, it wasn't Officer Mallory. It was someone higher, Captain Robbins. A man Ray had met more than once at city events, always polite, always smiling. "Raymond," Robbins said, forcing a weak smile. "We're trying to sort this all out." Ray tilted his head. "Sort what out? You've held me here without access to counsel. No official charges. This is illegal. I know how it looks." "No, you don't know how it looks," Ray snapped, his composure cracking. "Because if you did, you'd realize this isn't just about me. This is about what happens when the law forgets who it's supposed to protect." Robbins shifted uncomfortably. "Just hang tight. We're working on something." As the door closed again, Ray felt that familiar chill. The kind that tells you no one is coming to save you. At least, not yet. Out on the streets, protests had already begun. A small group had gathered outside the police station, holding signs and chanting Ray's name. "Justice for Ellis," they cried. The crowd was small, but growing. Word had spread fast. Social media influencers, lawyers, students, all demanding answers. Inside his car parked 3 blocks away, a man in a dark coat watched the scene. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just stared. He made a single call. "It's begun," he said. "They're digging." "Let them dig," a voice replied coldly on the other end. "We've already planted what we need them to find." The man ended the call and drove off, blending into the traffic like a shadow disappearing before dawn. Back inside City Records, Maya pulled up another document. Her eyes widened. Marcus, he requested a judicial freeze on specific appointments. Which ones? She flipped the screen toward him. Judges in 3 cities. All had connections to a single donor network. All rushed through approval in the last 6 months. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was trying to stop something bigger than just bad rulings. He was trying to stop a takeover, Maya whispered. They both paused. That's when the building lights flickered, and the computer screen went black. Marcus looked around. Did you save anything? No. Neither did I. Someone was watching. Someone was interfering. And now they knew. But what they didn't know was how far the rot had already spread. Back at the station, Ray Ellis sat alone in silence. The air was heavy. He thought about his father, a man who'd marched with Dr. King, a man who told him, "Never let fear make you forget your name." Ray whispered to himself, "They may have taken my freedom, but they won't take my voice." Outside, the chants grew louder. The storm clouds rolled back in, the sky darkening again. Something was coming. And when it arrived, it wouldn't ask for permission. It would demand truth. But for Raymond Ellis, the question wasn't just whether justice would be served. It was whether justice still existed at all. Thunder rolled low in the distance as night fell over Brookwood. Rain streaked the windows of the precinct where Raymond Ellis remained locked in that dim holding room, hours ticking by with no clear answers. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above him. He could hear faint shouting outside, the growing sound of protesters gathering in the streets. But still, no one came to explain, no lawyer appeared, and the silence around him thickened. It was clear now. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or a procedural mistake. It was something more deliberate, something built on fear and power. Officer Mallory sat in the hallway, jaw tight, watching the live feed on his phone. The video of the arrest had now reached over 1 million views. Cable news channels were running with the headline, "Chief Justice detained without charges, civil rights groups demand answers." Mallory scrolled through the comments, half of them furious, the other half confused. He hated the attention. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was told it would be quiet, controlled. A routine pickup. But it had spiraled. And part of him was starting to wonder whether he had been played too. Down the corridor, Captain Robbins had locked his office door. He was pacing, phone to his ear. "This is getting out of hand," he hissed. "We've got press outside, protesters chanting, and half the department is on edge." A voice on the other end spoke calmly. "Stick to the narrative. He's being held under suspicion. Don't give specifics." "We don't have specifics," Robbins snapped. "You sent us in blind. And now people are asking questions we can't answer." There was a pause. Then the voice said, "If you let him go, everything falls apart." Keep him there. One more day. Robbins clenched his jaw. And if someone comes with a court order? We've already got a judge lined up to block it. Click. The call ended. Back at City Records, Maya Turner and Marcus Lee sat in the dark, the power still flickering from what they were starting to believe wasn't just a simple outage. They had printed a few documents before the blackout, just enough to keep digging. And what they found was alarming. A web of judges, donors, and sudden promotions, all tied to a shadowy network claiming to support judicial reform, but whose real purpose seemed to be control. Maya leaned over a folder. This isn't just corruption. This is coordinated. Marcus nodded slowly. And Ellis found out. That's why they're trying to silence him. Not just embarrass him, bury him. But they picked the wrong person, Maya said, her eyes hard. Across town, in a quiet apartment, a different story was unfolding. A young police officer, the rookie from earlier, sat at his kitchen table, head in his hands. His name was Daniel Ruiz, fresh out of the academy, and this was supposed to be his dream job. But what he saw today haunted him. The look in Ellis's eyes, the confusion, the disbelief. Daniel had watched enough cases in school to know due process. And this wasn't it. He pulled out his laptop, hesitated, then opened his anonymous email. He began typing. To whoever is looking into this, you need to check the internal memo from April 14th. It was signed under pressure. Not everyone agreed with it. Someone's hiding something big. They told us not to ask questions. But this isn't right. He paused, then hit send. The email landed in Marcus's inbox 20 minutes later. Back in the holding room, Ray sat quietly. He could hear the noise outside growing louder now. The chants were more intense. People were angry, and they had every reason to be. He thought about the people who had trusted the system, who had sat before him in courtrooms hoping for fairness. How many of them had been betrayed by the very institution he believed in? The door creaked open again. Mallory entered, slower this time. His confidence from earlier had cracked. I brought you some water, he said, placing a plastic cup on the table. Ray looked at him carefully. You ever wonder what it's like on the other side of that badge? He asked softly. Mallory didn't answer. I've seen young men your age come through court for things they didn't do. Pulled over, searched, humiliated. They all said the same thing, I didn't think it could happen to me. Ray paused. Now look where we are. Mallory shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't personal. It never is. That's the problem. Mallory turned to leave, but stopped. Just so you know, people are asking questions. Might not be long now. Ray nodded. It shouldn't have taken this long. Outside, the protest had swelled. Over 200 people now stood in the rain with signs, chanting not just for Ellis, but for justice. For transparency. For change. News vans lined the block, and reporters went live as the crowd swelled with emotion. Maya arrived minutes later, pushing through the crowd with a folder of documents and fire in her voice. We need access to Raymond Ellis now, she shouted at the front desk. You're holding him without cause, and this, she held up the folder, this proves motive. The officer at the desk hesitated. Ma'am, we can't release any. I have a federal motion ready, she said. And trust me, if you delay any longer, I'll make sure the judge sees everything. Inside the building, Captain Robbins watched through a security camera feed. He knew they were close to a breaking point. He picked up the phone. "They're here," he said. "And they're not backing down." "Then stall," the voice said on the other end. Robbins shook his head. "They brought paperwork. I can't hold him much longer without risking my own badge." Another pause. Then, quietly, "Fine. Release him. But make it messy." Robbins didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. In the cell, Ray heard the door open again, this time, with purpose. "You're being released," a new officer said. Ray stood up slowly. "What changed?" "Ask your lawyer." He was led through the back exit, avoiding cameras, avoiding the crowd. But as he stepped outside into the rain, Maya was already there. She ran up to him, umbrella in one hand, papers in the other. "They tried to bury this," she said, "but we're not letting them." Ray looked at her, soaked and determined. "I'm not finished either." Behind them, the protest grew louder. And in the shadows, somewhere in the city, the people who had orchestrated this mess were already preparing their next move. Because the truth was dangerous. And those who feared it were just getting started. Raymond Ellis stepped into the rain, blinking as the crowd outside caught sight of him. The shouts turned into gasps, then cheers. Phones went up. News cameras zoomed in. He wasn't free for long, not really, but in that moment, he breathed the outside air like it was the first breath he'd taken in days. Maya stood beside him, soaked, eyes sharp. Marcus joined moments later, holding the printed files in a waterproof folder. They didn't speak much. There wasn't time. They moved quickly, ducking into a waiting black sedan parked just beyond the protest lines. As they pulled away, people clapped and chanted his name. But Ray didn't feel victorious. He felt hunted. He had seen enough from the inside to know this wasn't over. The storm was just starting. "We don't have long," Marcus said from the passenger seat, flipping open the folder. "There's another name connected to those judicial appointments, someone you won't believe." He slid the paper over. Ray scanned it. His jaw clenched. "Eli Garrison." Maya nodded. "He was your colleague. Then he withdrew from public service, remember?" Quietly. No one questioned it. "Because we thought he stepped away for health reasons." "Turns out," Marcus said, "he became one of the lead architects of that private judicial donor network. They've been hand-picking judges, pushing them into position under the radar. It's been going on for years. Your audit found the thread, that's why they came after you." Ray leaned back, stunned. So all of this, the arrest, the silence, the delay tactics, it was all just to shut down the audit. "It's bigger than the audit," Maya said. "We have proof they're working with political donors to influence court rulings across 3 states. Housing, criminal sentencing, voting access, all of it manipulated." They pulled up outside Maya's office, a modest legal aid building downtown. The windows had been smashed earlier that day, likely not by accident. Still, they moved fast. Inside, a secure server held their backups. Maya typed furiously, uploading files, copying everything they had onto encrypted drives. "Once we release this," Marcus said, "they'll come after us too. Hard." Ray stared out the window. "Then we don't just release it. We make it public. Live." Marcus blinked. "You mean a press conference?" "I mean a hearing." On record. Under oath. With witnesses. Maya raised an eyebrow. They'll try to block it. They can try. But this isn't just about the system anymore. It's about the people. They're watching now. They care. Meanwhile, across town, inside a luxury boardroom draped in tinted glass and polished mahogany, Eli Garrison sat with 4 others. His expression was calm, but there was tension in his jaw. A flat screen on the wall showed a live feed of the protests and breaking news updates about Raymond's release. "This is spiraling," one man said. "The judge we installed in Greystone is already under scrutiny. Our Newbridge asset pulled out. They won't stop digging," a woman added. "What if they expose the foundation?" Garrison raised a hand. "They'll try. But they won't make it far. They have Ellis," someone whispered. "And Turner. She's relentless." Garrison leaned forward. "Then we discredit them. Tonight." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Push this to the media contacts." Background noise. "Past tax issues, old court delays, anything we can use to smear them." "But," Garrison cut him off, "we've controlled the courts this long. We won't lose it over one judge who forgot how to stay quiet." Back at Maya's office, as they prepared for the release, something strange happened. The power flickered again. Then, one by one, the computers began to shut down. Marcus cursed under his breath. "They're hacking the grid." "We need another location," Maya said. "We can't risk losing everything." Ray stood up. "There's one place they wouldn't think we'd go." 10 minutes later, they pulled up to the back entrance of the courthouse, the same place where Ray once entered in robes and silence, where justice was supposed to live. Now it felt like enemy territory. But the internal network was still intact. They logged into the judicial system, accessed the public court scheduling server, and submitted a request. "Emergency review hearing," Maya said, typing quickly. "With backup files uploaded as sealed evidence." Marcus glanced at Ray. "You sure about this? They'll send someone to stop it." Ray looked him straight in the eyes. "Then they better bring more than threats." By midnight, the courtroom was dim but active. An overnight clerk processed the request. A judge was assigned. Not one of the corrupted names, someone new, someone honest. But they weren't alone. Outside, 2 unmarked black SUVs pulled up and parked in the shadows. A man stepped out, earpiece in, scanning the building. Inside the courthouse, the hearing was about to begin. Raymond stepped to the podium, heart pounding. This wasn't just about saving his name. It was about exposing the rot hiding behind the walls of justice. The courtroom doors creaked open once more. 2 men entered, wearing badges that didn't match any known precinct. Maya froze. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from a hidden source. "They're not who they say they are. Get out now." But it was too late. The courtroom lights dimmed for a moment. Outside, the chant of protesters still echoed. The storm clouds were back, thick and heavy, hanging low over the city. In that moment, with eyes watching from every direction and danger pressing in from unseen places, the entire truth balanced on the edge of a single testimony. The final showdown hadn't come yet. But it was seconds away. Just as the courtroom doors shut behind the 2 unidentified men, a chilling silence settled over the room. Raymond Ellis could feel the shift in energy. Something wasn't right. These men didn't move like attorneys or observers. Their suits were sharp, but their eyes were scanning the room, not the documents. Maya instinctively stepped closer to Ray, while Marcus pretended to organize his files, slipping his phone into his lap to discreetly record. The judge entered briskly, clearly unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. She glanced over the sealed files, flipping quickly through the pages. "This is an unusual late-night hearing," she said. "But the evidence warrants immediate review." She looked up. "Mr. Ellis, you may proceed." Ray stood, chest tight. "Your Honor, what we're about to present doesn't just affect my reputation or this court, it challenges the integrity of the entire judicial system." He gestured toward the drive Marcus had passed forward. "We've uncovered a coordinated effort to influence court appointments across multiple jurisdictions. Decisions in housing, criminal justice, and voting access have all been manipulated by a small circle of individuals, many of them with ties to private foundations posing as reform advocates." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting a conspiracy at the highest levels?" "Yes, ma'am," Ray said, his voice calm but firm. "And I believe my unlawful arrest was part of a calculated attempt to stop this from coming to light." Just as the judge leaned forward to speak, one of the suited men in the back quietly reached for his waistband. Maya noticed. Her heart stopped. "Judge," she said suddenly, stepping forward, "may I request a temporary recess? I believe we're in danger." The judge blinked. "Excuse me?" The second man took a step forward. "Objection, Your Honor," he said, flashing a badge too quickly to read. "These claims are deeply exaggerated. We're here on behalf of national security." Ray stiffened. "National security?" The man nodded, voice like stone. "The data you're presenting was obtained through unauthorized means. It contains classified information. You're all in possession of stolen federal documents." Marcus stood now, angry. "That's not true. These came from public servers. Redacted records. All legally obtained." But the man was already speaking into his earpiece. "Confirming now. Suspects located. Initiate response." Outside, the black SUVs that had been waiting began to move. Additional vehicles pulled up, plain, silent, but full of purpose. The courthouse, for all its history and symbolism, was becoming a trap. The judge hesitated. "I need clarification. Who gave you the authority to interfere in this hearing?" The first man looked directly at her. "We act under provisional federal authority, Section 93. But the judge didn't flinch. "That doesn't apply here. This is a state court proceeding." He stepped forward anyway. Suddenly, from the back hallway, the young rookie officer, Daniel Ruiz, burst into the room, breathless, holding a flash drive. "Judge," he shouted, ignoring the two suited men, "you need to see this. I have body cam footage, original footage from Ellis's arrest. It proves he was set up." Everyone froze. Ray's eyes widened. Maya turned sharply toward Daniel. The two men didn't react. But Ray noticed the flicker in their expressions. Something had shifted. The rookie had just brought in a variable they didn't expect. Daniel handed the flash drive to the bailiff. "It shows officers receiving real-time instructions from someone off-book. The arrest wasn't in any database. They were told to erase all logs after." The judge took the drive, sliding it into the courtroom display system. On the screen, grainy footage appeared. It was the moment Ray was pulled from his car, his face confused, calm, and completely compliant. In the background, a voice crackled through a radio, "Bring him in. No charges. Don't log this. We'll handle the paperwork later." The courtroom erupted in gasps. Even the bailiff looked stunned. One of the suited men took a step back toward the door, muttering into his collar, "Abort. We've lost control." Ray stepped forward again. "This isn't just about me. It's about how deep this goes. Every piece of evidence we've presented, every file they tried to erase, every court decision influenced by money and fear, it's all right here." The judge leaned back, lips tight. "I'm issuing an immediate injunction. All related documents are now under court protection. Anyone attempting to interfere will be held in contempt." The two men turned toward the door. But just as they reached it, another twist arrived, this time from above. A helicopter thundered over the building. Then another. The sound rattled the windows. Outside, the crowd of protesters parted as a convoy of federal marshals arrived, not the ones involved in the earlier intimidation, but real, verifiable officials. The Department of Justice seal was visible on their jackets. Ray looked at Maya. "What did you do?" She smiled tightly. "I sent a copy to D.C. An old friend of mine. She didn't say much, but I guess she listened." The suited men were immediately intercepted by the marshals. One of them tried to run, but was taken down before he hit the stairs. The crowd outside erupted again, this time not in anger, but in something else. Hope. Inside, the courtroom remained tense. The judge, now fully aware of the magnitude of what was unfolding, turned to Ray. "This hearing will resume at 9 a.m. sharp. But from this moment on, you are under full legal protection. And the state will ensure nothing else happens to you, your team, or this evidence." Ray nodded slowly. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. If anything, the game had just changed. Because this wasn't about protecting him anymore. It was about protecting the truth. And someone, somewhere, was still out there, watching. Waiting. Planning their next move. Morning light streamed through the courthouse windows, falling softly across the empty chairs, slowly filling with reporters, community leaders, and quiet citizens who had followed every moment of the case online. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs and anticipation. Raymond Ellis sat at the front, dressed in a plain dark suit, his hands folded, the weight of the past week sitting squarely on his shoulders. Maya stood behind him, flipping through final notes, while Marcus checked the live feed from a tablet. The world was watching. Across the aisle, Eli Garrison entered, flanked by his high-priced legal team. He didn't speak. Didn't look at Ray. But his face, usually smug and polished, now looked weathered. The allegations, the footage, the public exposure, he was no longer protected by the shadows he used to control. The judge entered promptly at 9 a.m. and called the court to order. "We're here to conclude proceedings regarding the unlawful arrest of Chief Justice Raymond Ellis and examine the evidence surrounding potential corruption within the judicial appointment process." As the testimonies began, the courtroom became a live drama of truth meeting resistance. Maya presented documented transfers from shell donors. Marcus walked the court through how case outcomes shifted in favor of specific financial interests after certain appointments. One by one, names were read aloud, some expected, some shocking. More than a few people in the room shifted uncomfortably. Then came the turning point. The rookie officer, Daniel Ruiz, was sworn in. His voice trembled at first but steadied as he explained what he saw the day of the arrest. "We weren't given a warrant. We weren't told the charges. We were just told to follow the car, pull the judge out, and wait for further instructions." "Who gave the order?" the judge asked. Daniel paused, then said clearly, "It came from Deputy Director Alan Monroe. At least, that's the voice I heard on the line." The courtroom gasped. Monroe wasn't just some city official. He was high up in a federal agency, a name usually buried deep in bureaucracy. If what Daniel said was true, this conspiracy went higher than anyone feared. Raymond turned to Maya, whispering, "I didn't see that coming." But it wasn't the end. The judge, shaken but composed, ordered a recess for deliberation. During the break, agents escorted Monroe into the building. He had just landed from Washington and demanded to speak. Inside chambers, the tension grew. Monroe claimed he was being set up, that he had never issued any such order. But then, Marcus received a message, one last file from their anonymous source who'd been feeding them information all along. It was a full call recording, time-stamped, traced, undeniable. Monroe's voice giving the arrest order, and another voice responding. A familiar voice. Ray's breath caught. He knew it instantly. It was Eli Garrison. Not from years ago, not a recording from the past. It was from just 3 weeks earlier. Garrison wasn't just involved. He was orchestrating everything. The donations, the appointments, the false arrests. And he wasn't working alone. Monroe had been his link inside the federal branch. The recording played as the judge returned to her bench. Garrison's calm voice echoed through the courtroom speakers, instructing Monroe to contain Ellis before he opens the audit file, and telling him to erase the comms log after extraction. Every line tightened the courtroom like a drawn wire. The judge's face changed. Whatever doubt she carried dissolved. "In light of this new evidence," she said slowly, "I am issuing a full investigation into Deputy Director Monroe and Mr. Eli Garrison. All case files tied to appointments made under this corrupt influence will be reopened." People in the gallery clapped. Outside, a cheer rose. It felt like the moment they had all waited for. Ray closed his eyes briefly, finally able to breathe. But just as the courtroom started to exhale, a sharp noise rang out. A phone buzzed on the clerk's desk. The judge paused. The clerk picked it up, read the message, and turned pale. "Your Honor," she said slowly, "I think you need to see this." The judge read the message silently, her eyes narrowing. Then she looked up at the room. "There's been a data breach at the state's secure archives. Every file linked to judicial misconduct, gone. Wiped clean." Gasps broke out. Maya's face went white. "How?" Marcus was already on his tablet, typing furiously. "The backup servers, they're compromised too." "They moved fast," Ray said quietly. "They were ready for this." Just then, a figure stepped into the courtroom, unnoticed at first. A woman, dressed plainly, standing in the back row. She held up her phone. "They didn't get mine." Everyone turned. She stepped forward. "I was the tech contractor who first flagged the inconsistencies in the appointment system. I saved everything off-grid. Every file, every timestamp. I didn't trust the system, so I kept it on me." She handed the judge a drive. The judge stared at her. "What's your name?" The woman smiled. Ava. Ava Carson." Ray's mind reeled. That was the same name attached to the anonymous tips they'd received for weeks, the whistleblower they thought was just a ghost behind a screen. Ava turned to Ray. You fought for the truth when everyone else gave up. I wasn't about to let them erase it. The judge took the drive and nodded. Then we moved forward. And just like that, the tide turned again. The media ran the footage within minutes. Arrest warrants were signed. Monroe was taken into custody. Garrison tried to leave the building but was stopped at the exit by the same marshals he once used to intimidate others. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. A wave of long overdue accountability began to rise. Raymond stepped outside into the daylight. This time, not as a victim. Not as a suspect. But as a man who had weathered the storm and helped pull the system back from the edge. But as the cameras turned off and the crowd faded, Marcus approached him quietly. You might want to see this, he said, handing over a news alert on his phone. Ray read it. Federal investigation to expand into 5 more states. More officials suspected to be involved. He sighed. This was just the first chapter. Maya joined them, arms crossed. Then we'd better get ready for the next. Because the truth was, even when the courtroom went quiet, the fight for justice never really ended. And somewhere in the distance, behind closed doors and quiet voices, the next move was already being planned. Weeks passed, but the echoes of the courtroom drama still lingered in every corner of the nation. News outlets ran constant coverage. Social media exploded with videos, interviews, and threads breaking down each twist of the scandal. Hashtags like #JusticeForRay and #CourtroomTruth trended for days, as people from all walks of life followed the case like a national event. Raymond Ellis had become a symbol, not just of resilience, but of how quickly justice could be twisted when power and prejudice worked together. But in the quiet of his small office back at the university, Ray sat alone, looking over a final report from the state's ethics committee. It detailed how over a dozen judges had either resigned or been placed under investigation. Several were facing indictments. Reforms were underway. Court appointments would now go through a transparent, bipartisan review. Oversight committees were being formed, and for the first time, everyday citizens would be part of the process. Ray put the report down and looked out the window. For years, he had warned people that the system wasn't as solid as it seemed. That even something as sacred as a courtroom could be manipulated. Now, those warnings had turned into national reforms. It should have felt like a victory, but instead, it felt like a beginning. Maya entered, carrying 2 coffees. She handed him one and sat across from him, smiling gently. You're not used to being the face of something, are you? Ray chuckled softly. I never wanted to be. I just wanted to do my job, be fair, make sure the law meant the same thing for everyone. Well, you did more than that, Maya said. You changed things. You reminded people that even the most powerful should answer to the truth. He nodded slowly. I didn't do it alone. No, she agreed, sipping her coffee. But you were the one they tried to silence. And now your name is going to be remembered because they failed. Out in the hallway, students walked by, laughing and talking, some of them pointing as they passed his office. It was strange being back on campus. Before the arrest, he was just Professor Ellis to them. Now, he was something different. The man who stood against a broken system and survived. Meanwhile, Marcus was wrapping up an exclusive interview with one of the national outlets. He was planning to release a documentary with all the raw footage, untouched and uncensored. His work behind the scenes had been pivotal, researching, verifying, documenting every thread until the full picture emerged. For him, this wasn't just a story. It was a mission. A way to make sure no one ever questioned what really happened. Daniel Ruiz, the rookie cop whose courage helped change the case, had also seen his life transformed. He'd been offered a new position in the Attorney General's office, focusing on police reform initiatives. For someone who once doubted his place in the system, he was now helping fix it from the inside. And Ava Carson, the quiet whistleblower whose saved files turned the tide, had started a nonprofit dedicated to digital accountability in public records. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. Her name, once buried in secret, was now listed alongside the voices of change. But not everything had tied up neatly. Eli Garrison's trial was still pending. He had pleaded not guilty, claiming he was merely acting under legal counsel. Monroe, on the other hand, was cooperating, giving up names, timelines, and networks in hopes of a lighter sentence. Their downfall was unfolding, slowly but surely. Yet for every name exposed, more questions arose about how deep the corruption had gone. One evening, as Ray walked through the quiet streets near his home, he found himself reflecting on the entire journey. The arrest. The disbelief. The fear of being forgotten. The struggle to prove innocence in a system designed to protect power. It had all felt so personal, yet so universal at the same time. He knew countless others didn't get cameras or protests. Their stories faded into silence. That haunted him most. He stopped at a mural that had gone up during the protest, his face painted beside words that read, "The law belongs to the people." Someone had lit candles at its base. Flowers lay nearby. Ray looked at it for a moment, then knelt to adjust a candle that had fallen over. An older woman approached slowly. "Judge Ellis?" He stood. "Yes?" She smiled, eyes misty. "My grandson followed your story. He's studying law now. Said he wants to be a judge like you. One who listens. One who stands." Ray was quiet for a second, moved in a way he couldn't quite explain. "Tell him to learn everything. Question everything. And never forget who the law is meant to protect." She nodded, gripping his hand for a moment before walking off into the night. That simple exchange stayed with him as he returned home. It reminded him that this story wasn't just about courtrooms or files or secret recordings. It was about people. About fairness. About how easily things could go wrong when no one was watching, and how powerful truth becomes when someone finally speaks up. Ray sat on his porch that night, Maya joining him a little later. They didn't talk much. Just sat in the quiet, watching the stars. So much had changed. And yet, the work was far from done. But for now, there was peace. A peace earned through struggle, persistence, and truth. And somewhere out there, another person facing injustice might feel a little less alone, knowing that justice, real justice, was still possible. Because Raymond Ellis stood his ground. And the truth, finally stood with him.